So welcome. And this is going to be such a wonderful engagement with Ed Eberly and his son, Jonathan, and also Talon Smith, who's joining us this evening. And so I just wanted to give people just an idea of kind of like what the format is for this evening. Is we're going to show a couple of works in Edinburgh's collection of Ed's pieces. And then we'll transition to a presentation of his work. And then from there, we'll have a nice little presentation on Talon's work. And then we'll kind of engage in conversation. And then I just wanted to let people know any questions or comments you have, you can put them in the chat section below. All right. Okay, so Talon, can you show our viewers, our audience, the work of Ed?
Yeah.
There's two beautiful pieces.
Yeah, we have two pieces that were in the library display cases. The first one is The Gift of the Artist from 2006. It doesn't have a title on it.
Whoa.
Which I'm assuming, I want to say this was probably made in a visiting artist workshop.
Yes.
Maybe? Yeah. My favorite thing about it is that these the thumbs from where you lifted it to move it,
Yes.
fit perfectly.
Yes.
I'm like, oh, I know exactly how that went down. And then the second piece that we have is the Man in the Moon, also porcelain.
Whoa.
Stand back a little bit.
That's nice too.
Yeah. So Ed, is that those pieces ringing any bells for you? I know you make so much work, but you know, seeing those two, when I was like, oh my God, they're so paper thin. Like how you were able to do that. I mean, it's just, we were marveling over it when we were talking in preparation for this.
That's so nice of you. No, Lee Rexroad invited me up to do a demonstration. And so what I did was I made a couple of bowls and painted them right there. And so I haven't seen them since until now. So it's fun to see.
Yeah.
What was going on the Man in the Moon is kind of self-descriptive, but the other one was probably illustrating the some of the various brushes that I use in my work here.
Mm-hmm. Well, great, thank you. And thanks, Talon. And we're of course going to be talking more about Ed's work in a little bit. So you ready for a little presentation of Ed's body of work? I mean, it spans multiple decades. So like I said, I mean, this is just really an honor to be in conversation with you, Ed. And I was able to go to your studio with my husband, who's an architect that knows Jonathan. What was that, last month, I think it was?
Yeah, I guess maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of lose track of time. And so, you know, that it was like a nice teaser, and being able to, you know, be in fellowship with you tonight. So thank you very much. All righty. So I will share my screen. And let me pull up. There we go. All right. Everybody see this? Great.
Yeah, so just to note, everybody that's on the call, and I guess it will be on the recording, that that's our social media and our web address. And so feel free to visit, hit us on our contact page, or just keep in touch. We like to post about art, and we'll be putting more information about Ed's career and stuff from the archives in the coming months and years.
Yeah.
So this is the main room of the studio that we're sitting in. And when did you switch locations to this building? Do you have like a quick answer on the dates of your various studios that you've had?
Yeah, when I left CMU, opened up a studio in Millville, just outside of Pittsburgh. That was in 1984 to 85. And it was, I stayed there until 2011. And that's when we started to fix up this studio here in Homestead. The building that the studio was in was being torn down for the widening of Route 28. So they did, the state did us very well in compensating us for having to move the studio. So we were able to get our present studio, which is really terrific.
A quick question about some things. I just so this is a photo of the studio space that we're in, and you can see that Ed likes to use lots of different tables, and this is actually only about half of the room. In the foreground is a large assembly, a sculpture called, is that Time Again?
Yes.
It looks like Time Again. He has two such sculptures. One is called Time, and the other one is called Time Again. And so we're looking at Time Again. In the foreground, behind the wheeled tables and stuff, you can see that there's a wheel, and where the really bright light is in the back, you can't really see, but that's actually where my father paints a lot of the time. He almost always paints exclusively by natural light.
Right.
So that's the space. When most people think of my father's work, they're expecting to see figures hand painted on delicate porcelain forms. This piece, called The Poet and the Muse, was in a group show at the Warehouse, a small new museum in Milwaukee, during the fall of 2020. The show was called I'm a Story Self-Portraits and included audio programs recorded by the artists and describing something narratively about their work. This one called The Poet and the Muse. So we made a little audio recording. I don't know if it's still on the Warehouse website. Along with Ed, there was an exciting lineup of artists in this show, including Cindy Sherman, Jim Dine, David Hockney, Carrie Mae Weems, William Kentridge, Francesca Woodman, Keith Haring, many others. So you never know what exhibitions will happen in your career and where your artwork will take you.
Yeah. Wow. Now this takes us back to Edinburgh days. I think that's a photograph of me in my senior year. I still had hair. Well, much more than I have now.
1967 and your ID card.
Yeah.
And you know, the thing is, it says on the ID card, this card must be surrendered when you sever, to whom it was issued when they sever their connection with the university. So it's a good thing we're still connected with Edinburgh, or we'll be in big trouble.
Okay.
So one of the things we wanted to do with this presentation was to talk about some things that were, like, we wanted to be able to give you at Edinburgh and everybody that's on this call something a little bit different about Ed's career. So he kind of has a story about the origins of some of the aesthetics and this work and other works.
I'll try to make this brief, as brief as I can. When I went to Edinburgh, there was our our class schedule was laid out entirely for the art education students. And we had one elective in 4 years, and that elective had to be non-art. I can't remember what I took. I think it was philosophy. But anyway, so I had to take sculpture, and for some reason or another, we could only work in plaster. And what I did make was a sculpture using the sphere, the cone, and the cylinder as the building blocks of the figure. And maybe it was 2 feet high. So that was the beginning. And where that idea came from, I don't know. It just popped into my head to do that. And here I've been doing it ever since. And so that direct connection to the seed being planted in my junior year at Edinburgh and still working on it in 2000, whatever year this is.
2020.
2020.
21, you know,
Yeah,
still now.
21.
Today.
Yeah, still, so I'm still doing it. And
The same thought process.
yeah, still trying to get it right. Okay. And one of the curators at the Carnegie Museum, he liked the figures, and so there are 3 of them in a presentation at the Carnegie Museum. I can't remember what the show is called. Do you recall?
No.
No.
What it was?
It was
Like a biennial or something.
biennial. Yeah, it was a Carnegie biennial, something like that, which featured all local artists. And here are the same forms presented on the wall. Each of these forms, like for instance, the cylinder is maybe 12 inches high. And here I'm just making the bare bones connection, putting it out. And the previous image was with photographic lights, and this is natural light.
Yeah, gallery lights and natural light.
Natural light. And at some point, I believe it was over here in Homestead, that I ran across this quote from Cezanne: "Interpret nature in terms of the cylinder, the sphere, and the cone. Put everything in perspective so that each side of an object of a plane recedes towards a central point." 1904. I'm still working on it. So some various pieces.
This one's called A Sculpture Personified. It's almost 22 inches tall.
Okay. Installations.
So just as another, oh yeah, never mind. Yeah. Let's compile.
Then this piece is at the Museum of Art, Houston. I don't remember what it's called.
Okay.
Phenomenology of 10 vessels. And here I'm looking at the vessels themselves, the 5 larger vessels, and then the prints, the silk screens that I made of those. The first one, I believe it was ether. I photographed without any paint on it. And then I used that as the format for the screens. And here I'm pretty much talking about, I'm showing the various things that go into the art process. And And in the front or the two, there's a water jar and a mortar and pestle that are essential for making the clay.
Oh, I have an interesting quote from that installation, just to jump back. This is something that Ed said about the piece.
Sorry.
It's okay. About the phenomenology of 10 vessels, here's a quote from Ed about this piece. To inspire is to breathe in. To be inspired by a work of art is to breathe it in, to make it a part of you. The breath of the art making one stronger. So it's kind of an interesting.
Wow. I said that. That's pretty good.
That's quite poetic. Very profound, Ed.
Anyway,
You're not a poet? You sure not? Are you sure you're not a poet as well?
no.
We have poetry that'll be on the blog.
Okay, coming soon.
The next slide is a couple of came to the studio from the mattress factory, and they were looking for some installations. And I had some examples of possible installations that I would do for them, and they didn't seem very interested. I said, well, okay, let me draw you one. And so I drew this on a paper napkin, which they liked and which did materialize in one of the rooms there.
And when did you have this installation at the mattress factory? Do you recall? This is in the 90s. Was it in the 90s?
Yeah.
Yeah,
90s. Okay.
that's good. That's good.
Yes, in the
I guess
90s.
I do remember one of the first times I went to the mattress factory when I came to school here. I remember seeing that.
Oh,
So-
really?
Yeah. And I interned at the mattress factory and
Oh,
had
great.
my wedding reception there too. So
Great.
Great. Well, we're lucky that you're on I'm trying to figure out what the right for this call that you're doing this interview, because I got lazy on some of the art references. I didn't have all the titles in there, so
not a problem. Not a problem.
it's good.
Now where are we going? Porcelain.
Yeah, and I just actually want to ask you a question, Ed. When you went up to Edinburgh to do the demonstration, did you bring your porcelain with you, or did you use theirs?
I believe I used theirs, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
No, maybe I think I took my own.
Ed has a special porcelain body that he's been using for how long?
Since '84.
That Standard Ceramics makes for us.
Yeah.
And it's not like anything super fancy. I'm not sure what the characteristics about it that are a little bit different. But yeah, he's been working with like the same clay the whole way through.
This was a part of a teapot that I was making that had various parts on it. And this just being one of them, but this piece was left over. And I was working in my basement in Squirrel Hill at the time. That was my studio.
Pre-studio.
Yeah. And I had some sigillata left over from a demonstration I did for the kids. And I looked at that piece and I looked at the sigillata and I put the black on it. I said, wow, that is terrific. So this is the very first piece where the black sigillata hit the porcelain. And even at that time, I put glaze on the inside of the cup. So it's only 2, maybe 3 inches high. But that was the beginning of it all. I said, wow, what are the possibilities of this? Well, haven't run out of gas yet.
This piece is called Tin Feathers Metal Wings, and it's at the National Gallery of Australia. These are deconstructed sculptures, basically.
And the other side of it.
And then this is a slide of the underpainting process. Just we're working backwards in time in terms of process with some of these deconstructed forms.
Now, in most of my painted porcelain work, it begins with the painting begins with an underpainting, what I call the underpainting, where I introduce some activity, some color, but usually not black. So seeing the black here is unusual. So I caught it before I started to paint the figures, and black here, and of course black on that piece, and then etched back through.
This graffito technique.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm going to talk to you about, abstraction too, that goes into your work too. But I'm going to save that for the later though.
Okay.
So just then that's another view.
And this is just an array of all the parts and pieces that I use for. I make two of those at the same time, because I only use half of the vase for one piece, and of course the other half goes in the second piece. So I don't waste any of my time or waste the clay. And I usually draw, particularly for involved pieces, I will keep notes on weights, how much clay I used for a particular thing, and what the parts were. And I'll even write the itinerary out. Yeah, set up successful.
I love this. This is like a roadmap.
Yeah.
Architectural drawings for an artist.
Yeah. So if I want to do it again, I can just go back to the notes and say, oh, okay, that's what I did. Instead of trying to guess it. At one point, I made these large vessels. I don't even know how high these are.
43 inches high.
No, 43 inches high.
It's pretty tall.
Yeah.
Comes up to your chest.
And those are in stoneware. I did a number of those.
There's a little fruit bowl for scale.
Yeah, thrown coil.
Some details. This piece is called Arrows Coming into Balance, 1991.
Yeah, some good things came out of these large pieces.
There's a load of greenware. We're getting ready to load it into the kiln. And so you can see that when you might have gotten it from the earlier work too that was in progress, but the black and white work is actually kind of gray and white until it's fired.
Yeah.
When you're working, so you're working on one color palette, kind of or one great range of grays and blacks, knowing what it's going to look like later when it comes out of the kiln.
Okay. So.
And because it's porcelain, we fire everything to cone 10. And so that's just it. And this is our gallery we have here at the studio with some of the work on display. This is during the NCECA convention in 2018. When we were one of the venues here in Pittsburgh for people to come through. And, you know, with the pandemic, I'm sure we're all just kind of hit kind of hard. So just as much as we're looking forward to having you in our studio, I'm sure you're all looking forward to having other people come through your studios as well.
Yeah.
And Ed and Jonathan, where's the address? What's the address of your studio in Homestead?
Right. Well, for just to mention again, plug our website, edeberly.com, because there's a map on there and contact form. But we're located in Homestead, Pennsylvania at 229 East 9th Avenue, Homestead, PA 15120.
Yeah, just one block from the main business district.
I'll type it in the chat box while we're talking.
That would be great. I love this picture of you, Ed.
Yes, this is Mark Parrott. He wanted to take this shot.
Yeah, you among your monumental vessels.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, this was great. So I'm gonna stop sharing. Let me see here. Move this. Let's see here.
We got a few questions in the chat too.
Yes. So let's see here. Let's see about some of these questions before we move over to Talon and show some of Talon's work. So Professor Wellman said, oops, sorry.
Hello, Kalolo. It's so nice to see you. And Ed, thank you so much. And Jonathan, for how incredibly generous you're being right now and sharing your space and your history and your thoughts. This is really, I think, so wonderful and wonderful for growing our understanding of the objects that we have in our permanent collection. Absolutely indispensable to our understanding of the objects that we are guarding for you and conserving. But we need to understand them better, and you're helping us do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a great question.
It is.
So the question, Dad, is can you talk about how you bring together your relationship with Cubism, the fine arts, Picasso, and crafts? Because your work just spans so many.
I know that was kind of
Well, I can't talk about it, but I do it.
Yeah. So is it kind of instinctual? You know, the minute you said cylinder and cone, as an art historian, I know Kalolo and I both said Cezanne. But, you know, I think craft people relate to that geometry differently than people do in painting or in any other area. Can you talk about these geometries in the cylinder and the cone, how a ceramicist thinks about these things?
Well, they're the basis of everything that we do.
I'll do something special here. I'm going to paste into the chat while we're talking for everybody a rough cut for a short video that I made with Ed in 2016, and it's called Throwing a Drawing.
Oh.
Okay. And so that'll be like a little bonus content for everybody on this chat. And it is very curious. And I think it does make a statement about the relationship between all of these. It answers your question, actually, believe it or not. So I'll throw that in the chat, the link for it.
I wanted to, someone mentioned brushes, and I brought some brushes over for us to look at if you want to.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay. How do I do that?
Here's the camera right here with the green light.
So you're going to show us some of your tools.
This is a small yucca, piece of yucca plant from the Southwest.
Oh yeah, if you hold it in front of you, yeah. See how it's in the black? You can see it a little well.
Yeah. My hands, see how small it is. Now, I've been using this small one for about 20 years, and it just refuses to quit. And this is what I do the underpainting for, the small bowls particularly, but all the way up to the largest pieces. This piece will be involved in that, as well as this larger piece of yucca. Just dried, and then you comb it out to get the fibers. And then this long this long thing that I can't remember the name of this particular flower, but it's very nice for the larger pieces. And then that's all the way down to the sable piece brush that I use for a great deal of the painting of the figurative detail painting. And this is handmade by a fellow out in Oregon. And I've been using those ever since '85. So.
And Ed, with the yucca, where did you source that? Where did you pick that out?
A former graduate student was living down there, and she sent me some yucca.
Wow.
You cut it off right at the ground line, right at the dirt line. So, because that's where the meat of these fibers are.
Wow.
In the long leaf. Now, this leaf would have been maybe 2.5 feet long, but I just cut it down.
Mm-hmm.
And then brush it, let it dry, and then brush it with a wire brush.
Wow. So I see there's several different questions. Lisa asked, very interesting to know that the 2 Eberly works in the Bruce Gallery collection are here because of Edinburgh University professor Lee. Rexroad brought Eberly back to Edinburgh to make the work. So thank you, Lee.
Thank you, Lee.
And then I think Ed just answered Professor Wellman's question about, do you make the brushes? Are they made for you? So those were partly answered, yes. And then let's see. Oh, also, could you, Jonathan, I think this is for you, about the alum who builds the kilns.
Mm-hmm.
If you, what's the name of the alum who builds the kilns? And if you wanted to put that also, that answer in the chat, that would be great too.
Yeah, I will.
It's Jerry Wagner.
Jerry Wagner.
He lives down in Uniontown. I haven't spoken to him in years, so I assume that he's still going.
Wow.
1 N or 2?
1 N.
Well, we're gonna transition to Talon and bring Talon into the fold.
Great.
And let me share my screen. And Talon can talk about their work. Okay. Oops, sorry. All these pop-ups. Okay. All right, sorry. Started at the end, work my way backwards. Go ahead, Talon.
So hello everyone, I'm Talon Smith. I'm from Pittsburgh, PA, and I'm pursuing my MFA in ceramics at Edinburgh. Actually all of my work is about Pittsburgh and trying to capture specific like images that I have of Pittsburgh growing up. My family came to the city in like the late 1890s, and they actually settled in Homestead, and then eventually ended up moving, taking a big old step across the valley to the Turtle Creek area. And so a lot of my memories are of like these very big, old, abandoned buildings and machinery and the Cary furnace with all of these like green native species taking back over. And for me, it's just, it's interesting to think about like the marks that we leave on our environment and how it doesn't, nature will always take back. Time just keeps on moving whether we like it or not. So we can go to the next slide. So lately I've been making a lot of pots, right? And I want to explore some other things, but my heart's always in pots because for me, they're very accessible and it's a way to get into people's homes and start conversations that maybe normally wouldn't get started. But yeah, and I work with atmospheres. I do soda firing and wood firing because I love the process of wood firing. Yeah. So that's a platter I did recently with screen printed native species on it. And then the next one is a teapot that I recently made. A lot of the work I make as well is made because people I care about want it or ask for it, because community is such a huge part of my work and what I want to do with my life. I think it's really important that I feel like I'm a part of something bigger than myself. And a lot of that is I get to explore that feeling with the community organizing I do in the Polish Hill area. So this was a teapot I made because I was like, I don't know what to make. And my friend was like, I want a teapot. And I was like, you got it. So here we go. And then this one is it was a cup set that I made for a show that I was invited to, and I called it 2 fingers of whiskey for 3 friends. Because a lot of times I think that having conversations with 3 people is so dynamic because there's a lot of jumping around and movement in the conversation. And when there's lulls, somebody always picks it up. So yeah, that's what I've been working on recently.
All right, thanks, Talon. And we'll be talking
Thanks.
about your work because I know you do some soda firing and just some of your process and technique. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so soda firing, I got into it at Carlow University when I was in my undergrad because I didn't have access to a wood kiln at the time. But while I was at Carlow, it turns out Dale Huffman, my professor, had given his wood kiln bricks to a friend of mine who then moved to Philly and then gave the bricks to me. So now that there's a wood kiln in the Laurel Highlands that I built last fall with bricks that just keep moving from like potter to potter. And I'm hopeful someday somebody else will get these bricks too, or at least some of them, so that they can just keep having this new life. But soda firing is a process where you fire the kiln to cone 10, which is like 2,300 degrees, and you introduce soda into the atmosphere. And a lot of the effects, a lot of my pots aren't glazed on the outside so that I can get those flashing effects and those deep dark grays from doing like reduction in the kiln, which really means taking the oxygen away from the kiln. When you do that, because fire is hungry, it starts stealing that oxygen molecule from the clay and glazes. So you get these really cool vapor effects, which for me take me back to like walking through like downtown Braddock and like the like salt lines and stuff that would appear on streets, or like when the leaves are left on the road for too long, or like just like the way that rust oxidizes on different things. And wood firing is just, it's such a labor intensive, community driven experience, and everybody involved is working with each other. And for me, there is no better way to get to know somebody than working with them, because you really that's when you just start sharing information and going back and forth. And man, sometimes you get into some deep conversations at wood kilns, and it's always surprising to me.
And Ed, I remember you when we were prepping for this, you talked about there are 2 types of sculptors working in clay, and you said those that work with fire,
Oh.
and then the other one you said is basically what you do. And And I thought this is really beautiful that, we have two different,
Yes.
sculptors working in clay here. And you both are using like different techniques,
Yeah, there are mud people and fire people.
mud and fire. That's right.
I'm definitely on the fire side.
I'm on the mud side.
I love it. Hey, I have a question for both of you, and also you too, Jonathan. So when did you know you wanted to be an artist? And you're both educators as well, but when did you know you wanted to be an artist?
Go ahead.
Yes, Ed? Oh, Talon, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. For me, it was my dad was an artist. He was an airbrush artist, so he was really well known in the in that Steel Valley for painting motorcycles and cars. So I spent a lot of my time learning how to use an X-Acto knife to peel very tiny pieces of
Oh,
stencils
wow.
and things so that he could use them in his paintings. And yeah, I knew, I think when I was like 6 years old, I was like, his life seems cool. He just gets to ride around on motorcycles and paint things and hang out with his friends. That sounds like the best idea. And I just kept chasing it ever since.
Yeah. I grew up a very, very shallow experience. I had no idea what art was, but I had an idea that I could teach art. So I went to Edinburgh to learn to be a teacher, but it was in my first year of taking freshman drawing. And I did a I did a drawing of the Presque Isle landscape, actually. And I was trying to do it in what I thought was what art was, and it was just not going well at all. And I finally gave up and just sketched it and drew it out the way I wanted to do it. And the teacher came up and says, "Now, Edward, that's art." And so it was at that moment that I thought, oh, okay, that's what it feels like. And so it happened right away in my freshman year.
And Ed, I know you had shared with me about your time in Edinburgh and how it was very, I would say, interdisciplinary. You were taking all different types of classes,
Yes.
not only in, studio arts, but, there was theater. I think that's what you were telling me. Like you were able to take classes outside of your focus area.
Well, we had to, yes.
So yeah, so you had to. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I don't recall those classes too much. I don't know what we were talking about. Trying to remember.
But you did say that it was, you had to take all different types of classes, right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
like math. Trying to get the art students to do math was quite difficult.
Well, it's very scientific. And Talon, how about you at Edinburgh? Like your classes, and were you expected to take, be exposed to all different, disciplines and focus, areas of focus? Or
Yeah,
studies?
we take different electives. Right now I'm taking sculpture, and I really found some passion in welding, it turns out. So really into metal and fire again. So yeah, we take that, and we also have art history. So I've had an art history class with Wellman, and then we do a seminar. And this semester is professional practices and just helping us figure out how to navigate the art world post grad school in terms of writing resumes, CVs, and how to email people to ask for things. So it's been really good, but no math, except for when I'm in the glaze room.
So there's a couple questions here. Professor Wellman asked, Talon, you and Ed both address the elements, quote unquote, central to clay. And Ed, through your phenomenology,
Phenomenology.
is it phenomenology? Okay, all right.
I know I misspelled that, Cololo.
Okay, because I was like, is that a new word? Okay, through his,
His series of those marvelous vessels where he emblazoned them with the different elements that are central to his process.
Right.
I love that. I love that, Ed.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, amazing.
Can I invite you along when I have to talk about them?
Well, I love talking to you about them here.
Yes.
Thanks.
Is it okay if I ask a question without chatting?
I
oh,
know.
sure,
I was
absolutely.
wondering, I'm sure you worked with Ferg. Who else was at Edinburgh? Was it Donna and Steve, or were they not there yet?
Not there yet.
So who was with Ferg?
No one.
It was Ferg.
Well, there was a fellow that he came in once in a while, but I no longer recall his name. But he would teach a class now and then, but it was really Ferg.
I've heard really good things about Ferg. You must have good stories about Ferg, I'm assuming.
I have a couple.
Yeah. Maybe for another time.
Yes.
Well, speaking about, is there still some kind of thing with the bell going on? Do you remember the story about the bell?
No.
I heard the story growing up about this bell. There was this bell on campus that everybody would steal from each fraternity or sorority or whatever faction, whether it was the artists and then, I don't know, but there was this bell on campus that kept getting swiped by one group from another, and that they had swiped a bell and like hit it in some cornfield or something like that. Is there still a bell thing going on?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
It's still in the cornfield.
Still in the, yeah, good.
Anyway.
There's some sort of like, ornament on campus that the students would.
Ed,
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
what kinds of figures were you introduced to in your classes? What kinds of influences were you encouraged to explore? And did you go off on your own and just kind of look at particular people that just fascinated you? Because your art draws together the heritage of clay and modernism.
Should I?
And what?
Modernism. I'm seeing a lot of Picasso in you, cubism, phenomenology, conceptual art. These are not fields we tend to connect to ceramics. But you are like all over this.
And add to that dynamic symmetry, which is a large part of my design work anyway, for sure. Large part of the work. That's the whirling square. I can't remember the other things it's called. Do you know what I'm
Golden
talking
mean,
about?
phi.
The golden mean.
Okay. So very classical.
Like in the phenomenology of 10 vessels, the ratio of the rectangle of the forms is the golden mean.
Right. Oh my gosh. Okay, sure.
1.618.
Okay. Yeah.
I could answer a little bit for some of the questions that you're asking. So my father paints out of a subconscious part of his mind. He's not, it's like kind of the art wants to come out. He doesn't work with live models. Some things he said in the past is he's not trying to get it right. He's not trying, like, oh, like, you're trying to paint a face and you don't, no, it comes right out. It's like his mind. And I don't mean his brain, I mean his mind, which is probably more of a whole body thing. His mind is like a super antenna It actually gets this information, as it were, from the universe and comes out into the work. So it's not like, oh, I have this memory and I want to do this narrative. It's not narrative. It's imagistic. That these are his words.
Right. Imagistic. I never go into a piece knowing what it's going to be. The piece tells me what it's going to be.
Because a lot of your work is collaged. I was fascinated by that.
Hmm.
I refer to them as figures.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But that collage, of course, is something we ascribe to people like Picasso, but hey, you're doing it. And you're doing it with porcelain.
Yeah, well, thank you.
So Lisa has a question. She's putting in a chat, but I said to her, you should just ask Ed.
Hi, Ed. I'm just really interested to know a little more about your experience here. I have not heard of Ferg, and just wondering if you could say anything about the faculty member, and also about what was it like physically to be here on campus at that time. I know that Loveland Hall was probably a building that you were taking classes in, but just what were the facilities like when you were here?
Well, Loveland Hall was it. Everything was contained within Loveland Hall. There was no outbuildings, no new buildings, no nothing. Ceramics was done in one of those smaller classrooms, and how they managed to put those wheels and everything in there, I don't know. But George Ferguson latched on. He was probably instructed to take the ceramics. Said, George, you will teach ceramics. And so he went to Alfred University for a summer school and kind of learned how to throw there. And so in my sophomore year, we had to take ceramics, which I dreaded doing because my high school experience was awful. And but I fell in love with it right away, and I fell in love with the people that were involved in it also, which weren't very many. Maybe it's just a handful. And but that was great fun. So I had one class of ceramics, and that was it. That's all you could take. And so, but I did work there, and I learned how to load kilns and fire kilns and do all that stuff.
It really is like a community thing. I mean, I remember this from growing up, and that's why it's really cool to have Talon on the call, and like from some of our conversation before the actual Zoom, we're just talking about, I don't know, Talon, if you have anything to say also about ceramics, and there are other kind of arts too. I mean, it's not exclusive, but ceramics really is like a very community kind of thing. Very, it's not just an isolated, like what you were talking about with firing the wood kiln.
Yeah.
There's always a lot of times there's community spaces, community effort between people who in these relationships.
Yeah, ceramics is also people, artists, craftsmen, what have you.
It's like that now, Talon, right? I mean, up at Edinburgh, right?
Yeah, for sure. I also think like sometimes ceramics is heavy, so you can't not ask for help. So there's like a humbleness that comes with that, where like you're like, it's not the field to get into if you want to do everything by yourself, unless you're working very small forever.
Right. Anyway, does that help answer the question?
Yes, thank you. That was really great.
Okay.
And we're gonna take one more question. Professor Wellman, would you like to ask it?
Oh, I'm just wondering about the ceramics community in Pittsburgh and how you both fit into that. Because community is so important. Talon has taught me that. Talon and I worked together, and Talon, I miss you. So I'm wondering how you would both speak, and we have to figure something out, Talon. We have to get together somehow. But in the meantime, how can we think about the way you define and pull on communities that are now rooted and anchored in Pittsburgh, and of course in Edinburgh too?
Yes.
So Ed, can you speak to, like, are your major contact people, are they other ceramicists, or how much contact do you have with artists in Pittsburgh, or are your close people not in the art field?
Close people are not in the art field, but I'm still in touch with artists all around the country. And I'm not that involved with the Pittsburgh art scene, ceramic scene, for some reason. I don't know. I'm just getting old. I don't want to go out.
We hope to be. I mean, we'd like to open our doors, Talon, and know a little bit more about what's happening in Pittsburgh. And
yeah,
and we also are going to be, like I said, we're going to be facilitating more cooperative work with, we have exhibition space, we have a huge gas-fired kiln, and we actually have some floor space that we're going to be opening up for some studios for local artists in the very near future. The pandemic kind of put it, we'd have a different answer to this question actually if it wasn't for the COVID pandemic. Because we probably have everything open already by now. So that's a really good question though. Yeah.
Okay, since your dad has raised it, can I ask you, my special area is aging actually, Ed. And I'm wondering if you can comment on how you feel as an older artist. How have things changed for you? How have they stayed the same?
Stayed the same.
Yeah? You feel like consistency?
Yeah.
Do you feel actually a greater sense of power because you're so familiar with your materials and your method now?
Good question. I have no idea how to answer it.
Yeah, but it's interesting to me, to imagine what our lives will be like when we reach your age, and how we'll define creativity differently when we're in our older age.
Well, just there are things that Ed has said even in recent conversations, and also in the past too, that very resonate with this type of answer. But things that we've talked about in the past are that even going back to the experiences as a student in Edinburgh all the way to this day, my father always says that he's looking forward to the next piece. And that there's this never-ending journey about being an artist where it's looking forward to the next piece, looking forward to the next piece. And it really is kind of like that, where if you're not, I don't know if it's a straight line, but then the line, I don't know if it really gets wider or narrower, is what I'm trying to say.
More narrow.
Okay. Because a lot of what he's doing now is what he's done throughout his whole career.
Yeah.
It might not be
but smaller.
Maybe the output is
not as heavy.
Not as heavy.
Yeah, to use Talon's word.
So yeah, but very similar, right? I mean,
yeah. We have
work that we're getting ready to fire in the kiln, and it. But there is something interesting which might be in it, to put you on the spot, Dad, about the question. That is, I've noticed. Here's something that you've said in the past, that a long time ago, that I remember you saying, probably during the 90s. You said this. You said, it never ceases to amaze me how other people are interested in my quirkiness. And if you are around enough of a body of his work, you can see that there are experiments and quirks and new ideas and things that kind of emerge and pop up and crop up. So what do you have to say about that? Because you're still quirky in your work, not as a person, but I mean, in your work. I see it all the time. There's this humor and this experimentation that happens in your work.
Huh. Well, I've grown to the point where I can no longer talk about it. I just do it. Sorry.
You know, to the connection with the community in Pittsburgh during the NCCA conference, Ed was really featured as an important part of that conference in Pittsburgh. The Pittsburgh community of clay workers and the national community is very aware of your work, Ed, and I thought it really stood out during that conference.
Well, thank you. That was a lot of fun.
Well, it is 6:30, everybody, and just wanted to be respectful of everyone's time, and just want to say, Ed and Jonathan and Talon, thank you so much for just the work that you do and the beautiful work that you put out in the world. And Ed, you know, it's really has been truly an honor to invite you, ask you to, you know, join us this evening and, you know, talk about your work and really shed greater light on the work that you've done and the imprint that you've made at Edinburgh, and also for these future artists, people like Talon and others. And so I just want to thank you so much. And as an art historian and curator, I just, it's really, I'm doing the happy dance, Ed, but I'm very self-contained.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Yes.
It's been an unusual pleasure.
And so your website, can you say your website one more time?
It's edeberly.com, and I'll type it in the notes.
Right.
And we just wanted to, this is a little unorthodox, but just because of the way Zoom is, thank you, Lisa and Charlotte, Talon, Leonard, Grace, Charles, and Anthony. I don't know if we've missed anybody, but just to try to make the call a little bit more personal. I know what it's like to hang out in the Zoom shadows, and so we just wanted to thank everybody for coming on the call.